My name is Ian Morrison, and I speak for the Friends of Canadian Broadcasting. I'm also here on behalf of leadnow.ca, our partner in this campaign, to deliver more than 130,000 signatures of Canadians who are concerned about the potential for political interference in the CBC arising from Bill C-60, the Omnibus Budget Implementation Bill. These signatures have been collected in just 1 week by Friends and Lead Now, as well as someofus.org. If the government takes control of collective bargaining at the CBC, as Bill C-60 proposes to do, the Prime Minister will become the ultimate boss of all of the CBC's employees. The Conservative government says that this is just an industrial relations matter, but it's definitely much more than that. No other public broadcaster in any free and democratic country in the world faces such interference with its editorial independence as what is proposed in Bill C-60. And there's a very good reason for that. Governments do not control the public broadcaster in free and democratic countries. Along with other media outlets, public broadcasters hold governments to account, a role that depends on being completely independent of the government of the day. With ultimate control of the salaries and working conditions of all CBC employees in the hands of the government, at a minimum, CBC will have to contend with the perception that its editorial decisions may be politically motivated. And they could well be. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that an editorial decision to go easy on the government could be made in the heat of a contract negotiation if the Prime Minister is in effect seated on the other side of the bargaining table. Even subtle influences on story lineups affect the quality of news decision-making. Without a strict arm's-length relationship and independence from government, the CBC will lose its credibility. The government says this is about controlling costs, yet CBC has demonstrated that its wage increases have consistently lagged behind the industry average. So what is all this about? It is our view that the Harper Conservatives' agenda is to rein in and control the CBC bit by bit. Ministers and government MPs alike are in the habit of attacking the CBC. Jason Kenney claims, for example, the CBC lies all the time. Just last week, the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of National Defense called CBC journalist Terry Milewski an old Trotskyite. I could go on. At the same time, the CBC Board of Directors has been stacked with people who donate to the Conservative Party. The Conservatives know that the CBC remains very popular with Canadians. That is why they have been very careful to attempt to mask their hostility toward the CBC. But Canadians see Bill C-60 for what it is. The signatures I have brought with me today have been collected in just 1 week, but they represent a growing body of opinion and concern that Bill C-60 crosses a line for Canadian democracy. This bill is supposed to go to the Finance Committee tomorrow. And those MPs, as they begin their work, they should know that the Harper government's plans to undermine the independence of the CBC are not sitting well with many Canadians. We are calling on the government to keep CBC free from political interference. Thanks. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Ian, you went to Mulcair's office, and last week he was. My name is Tim Melman. He was reluctant to actually focus in on the CBC. He would just comment generally on an attack on collective bargaining across the Crown Corporation, all the Crown corporations. So, wasn't it your photo op? Have you convinced him that the CBC has a unique sort of spot in this?
I have to take him at his word. That's what he told me. I choose to believe him. By the way, I'm doing a similar event in a few minutes with Mr. Trudeau.
Oh, where?
Okay. Up in the main rotunda.
Outside comment.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to speak with any of the MPs, James Moore, for example, any of the Conservative MPs about your concerns about the bill?
I have spoken with one or two of them. No conversation whatsoever with Minister Moore.
Was he just shutting you
we don't have a lot of confidence in Minister Moore. He's the man who said the day after the election, we are committed to maintain or increase funding for the CBC. We're committed to that. That's part of our platform. So, he can say anything he likes. I will treat it with similar disdain.
So funding is one thing, because we know Sheila Cox, I think, cut around $200 million from the CBC budget. In that
400, Tim.
400?
Well, I think she had help. There was a prime minister
And
who didn't like the CBC called Jean Chrétien. Yeah.
he didn't like it? No. But the sort of involvement in collective bargaining is totally different, because that will give the government, would that give the government the ability to control it politically and intimidate it?
We think CBC has many thousand employees. Almost half of them are journalists. We're particularly concerned with the people who are making nonfiction programming, the news and current affairs people. If they get the idea that they are working ultimately for the Prime Minister of Canada, as opposed to for an independent public service broadcaster, as other democratic countries have, we believe, as I said in the statement, that it will affect their coverage in a whole lot of ways, some subtle, some less subtle. This is bad for Canadian democracy, and the number here says 113. That was yesterday morning. It's 130 now. There's a viral nature to this petition. A lot of Canadians agree with us. There's not time yet to do polling, but we have done a lot of polling in the past, and we know that the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation is a popular institution, and the government knows that too.
I'm wondering if you could comment on the fact that this move by the government seems to be coming at the same time that a lot of CBC's contracts are about to expire, and if you could comment on why the government seems to have picked this time to put this forward to start getting into collective bargaining.
I've learned in my short life not to ascribe motives to people, and so I'll apply that to the government of Canada as well. We're judging them by what is there, what Mr. Nomitz and others found by doing their homework and reading, was it page 109 or something like that of the omnibus budget bill. That's what we're concerned about, why it's there, whether it's some gnome in the Treasury Board or the Prime Minister personally. We're not getting into that. It's bad public policy. The government should reconsider.
Well, and that's where one of the interesting things was that Tony Clement identified CBC Canada Post and Via Rail. The CBC contracts are all up between now and 2014. One of them is being negotiated. But Canada Post, it's not up. Its Cup W contracts are set until 2016.
You wouldn't expect a spokesperson for the Friends of Canadian Broadcasting to start commenting about Via Rail or Canada Post. Our attention is laser focused on the value of a national public broadcaster being independent from the government of the day, any government of the day, and that's our concern. All this industrial relations stuff, and by the way, I've lived through CBC lockouts. I mean, the CBC management is not known to be soft by its employees. There's been a whole lot of tension from the management point of view. If you're thinking about controlling costs, costs are controlled partly by the available resources. They're dealing with a $40-something million cut in their resources this year. I mean, the government has adequate control over that, and as I mentioned in my remarks, CBC has pointed out, and I take them at their word, that their salary increases are below the industrial norm.
Well, instead of industrial relations, I was wondering if it's possible, do you think that the government really is actually pre-election after the CBC trying to put some pressure on it, or whatever words you want to use, and then you Mr. Clement put up Via Rail, which the other contract, they just signed a 4-year contract in 2011. They have CAW being negotiated or acquired in December, and put up Canada Post, which is sort of as politicians sometimes too, distract from the real time.
And I won't repeat about motives, but I will say that this is both bad public policy and bad politics, because, and in fact, we track what the Prime Minister has said about CBC. And you know what he said about CBC since becoming Prime Minister? Just about zero. And so they know that CBC is a popular institution, and you know, maybe they thought this would go through with nobody noticing. I don't know.
Why are we seeing the kind of reaction that we're seeing from Canadians? I mean, 130 signatures in a week is a pretty substantial number.
Yeah, and it, you know, I went to bed last night at it was 120, and waking up this morning it's 130. A lot of people stay up later than I do, I guess. But this has struck a nerve, and it will continue to grow. And by the way, I said it was bad politics. We know from our polling and others' polling that a majority of people who vote Conservative like public broadcasting. This is not what is happening here is not something that will be popular with Canadians.
You know, for all the, I mean, the CBC is a respected Canadian institution. For all the government's talk about patriotism, I think for a lot of Canadians it's viewed almost as treasonous to even think about trying to do anything with the CBC. Do you think that there is any potential for this to really backfire against the Conservatives?
Well, treason is a strong word that you used, but I will say that
they talk about treason. You know what I mean? This is a government that likes to think of itself as the true promoter of real Canadian values. So
if they were to proceed with this and to undermine the independence of the national public broadcaster, a lot more people than just the hundreds of thousands that we deal with will be very concerned. And I think that they know that we are capable of organizing in a nonpartisan, effective way, but our supporters can be as partisan as they like in ridings that are crucial in the next election. They know that there are several thousand people in Waterloo, for example, who care about this matter. And so this is not going to go away. It's just the opposite. And I agree with you that CBC, for all its, the late Dalton Camp once said, love it or hate it, it's one of the few national institutions that still works.